This week on the ThriveMore podcast, I had the pleasure of interviewing Jerry Macnamara. He's the founder and CEO of a business called ProvenChaos. That is the best name of a business I've ever heard in my entire life, but he'll explain how that name came about. But Jerry is going to share a lot of information that's all based in fact and experience. There's no business theories here. There's no academia here. This is business experience applied. So if you're looking to scale your business, if you're looking to make the decision to jump into entrepreneurship, Jerry shares just amazing nuggets of wisdom. And on top of that, he's just a heck of a nice guy. You're really going to enjoy this one. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jerry Macnamara. Jerry's the founder and CEO of ProvenChaos, probably the best named business in the world. I love that. And we're going to learn about that. But it's a business designed to positively impact a healthier, happier world where people live with intention. He's also the host of The Best Places to Lead, which is a podcast that helps listeners unlock their potential and lead differently. Jerry's life goal is to have more fun than anyone else and positively impact 5 million or more people. And he accomplishes this by helping motivated people succeed. So we're going to dig into that too. Without further ado, Jerry, welcome to the podcast.
Roger, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, and I am looking forward to our conversation. I've listened to a number of your episodes, and boy, you're good at this. So this should be fun.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Somebody told me not too long ago that I have a radio voice. So I'm not sure if that means that I have a face for radio or if I have a radio voice, but let's just kind of get into this if we can. We talked a little bit before we went on air here, and I enjoyed just those 5 minutes. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of origin story before we really get into some of the meat and potatoes of the lessons here?
Absolutely. So like more than 50% of Americans, I grew up in a dysfunctional home and learned to be your classic overachiever, president of student council, captain's of sports team, straight A student. And that's just carried over and spilled into all aspects of my life. I have been lucky and honored, Roger. I've run 5 businesses in 5 different industries. I've sold products, I've sold services. I've done it in B2B, I've done it in B2C. I've never really been the technical leader inside any business, but I've been lucky to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. And so companies I've run have made the Franchise 500 a couple times. Another one made the Inc. 500. We also made Best Places to Work. And so I really believe that you can build a really fast growing company and also be a compelling best places to work. Sometimes people make choices like, oh, I can either grow or I can be a nice guy and my business will, grow a little bit at a time. So I think you can do that. I think you can do both really, really well.
Yeah.
And so, as I look at that, I've always been at the top of organizations. And it was only in the last company that I was brought in to run. I loved the work that I was doing. I loved the work, the people that I was serving. And the owner who had brought me in to be CEO, we just had a values misalignment. Our approach to the world was a little bit different. I would tell you, I'm more Buzz Lightyear to infinity and beyond. And it's hard, it's hard growing a business. And so
Sure.
It was the first time when I looked up and looked around and I was like, oh, this is what it means to not enjoy the work that you do every day.
Wow.
And I was like, man, this is really hard. And I couldn't change the rules of the game because, I wasn't a shareholder. And so that's when I really came to this mission of positively impacting 5 million people over the next 4 years through better business, because I've never met anyone who showed up to work and said, I really want to suck today. And yet there's plenty of people that are ineffective in what they do. It's not their fault. It's our fault as senior leaders. We have to do a better job leading the organization. And so that's really the mission that I'm on, is to help senior leaders run better, more compelling organizations. Because I really believe that if you're good at work, you have the potential to be great at home. And if you're good at home, you have the potential to be great at work.
Yeah.
And so I want to do my part to make sure that people go home and they're a good husband, a good wife, father, daughter, sister, friend, all of those things. I think, when you're miserable at work, and my wife looked at me and said, you need to quit.
Yeah.
You're not being a great husband. You're not being a great dad. You don't even have any friends because you're traveling so much and you're working so much. And so I think the equation's pretty simple, but executing on it is another story.
Execution is everything. Yeah. I want to rewind just a second because you ran right past it, but
Hmm.
It is a trend. I've read so many business biographies and talked with enough people, and I know you have too, that you said dysfunctional home life.
Hmm.
I strongly believe that trauma earlier in life is fuel for achievement later in life. It sounds twisted, but
Yes.
I've read too many out of this world successful people, and it was the trauma in childhood, and that takes different forms, that
Hmm.
drove them to prove something to themselves or the world, and continually do that. Can you speak, not your particular childhood, we don't have to go there, but just speak to kind of that as you work with CEOs and you work with different companies. What do you uncover as you come across these very highly successful people?
So I'm happy to share my story. I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
I grew up in a home where I had two parents who were sick, didn't love themselves as much as I love them, and
Hmm.
ultimately, after multiple stints in rehab, I had to go save myself.
Mm,
But stories, Roger. I mean, I, I was the first kid at school because I didn't want to be at home, and I
yeah,
was the last kid to leave school because I didn't want to go back home.
yeah,
And there were moments when there was such dysfunction in the house. We had a good side, a finished side of the basement, and an unfinished side of the basement. And I used to sleep underneath a pool table
wow,
because no one would find me there for whatever
yeah,
reason. But that was part of my story, and that's why I always say, geez, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. I'm here today because people loved me when I didn't know how to love myself, and I'm so grateful for all of those people. Um, but as far as trauma, yes, I think I probably saw the same article. There is the right level of trauma
yeah,
that makes you a high achiever. Too much trauma, you end up a drug addict and in jail.
yep,
And too little drama, you don't have any type of grit or resilience to get to the other side.
yeah.
One of the things I talk about a lot is I like to hire from the scratch and denial because
Love that.
business is really hard. And so I want to hear the hardest thing. Like one of my interview questions I always ask is, tell me about the hardest thing you've ever encountered and how you got to the other side of it.
Mm,
Because that tells me how gritty and resilient and battle toughened someone is. Because business is hard. And I
yeah,
want people who have faced adversity, who have had conversations with themselves, with their makers, with other people around them, and still made it to the other side. And one of the things that I used to do personally as a young kid, um, I went into Center City, Camden, and I grew up just outside of Philadelphia. Camden's one of the it battles with Baltimore, Detroit, and Washington D.C. for the most number of murders every year. And I would go to a food kitchen. I'd ride my moped into Camden, New Jersey, and I worked at a food kitchen in the morning before I went to school. And that was because it reminded me of just how grateful I am and all the
mm,
things that I have to be grateful for. No matter how much noise I had in my life,
yeah,
it was the ability to reground myself in the things that are truly important, that I had in my life. I had my health. I had a caring, loving community and support system. Um, and so I just use that really to fuel the opportunity for gratitude.
yeah,
And that has stayed with me through my whole life. Um, we talked about values a little bit, and
yeah,
I think when you get really clear about that, I don't care whether you're running a business, if you are an employee, if you're trying to be a great dad, the more perspective you have in the world, the better off you are.
agreed.
And part of that for me is putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. That's how you physically grow. That's where
Yep.
growth comes from. We put ourselves in stress and then we grow. So I think that's probably the underlying piece of that research. But yeah, I tell people all the time, hire from the scratch and denial, because if you find people with white gloves on,
Yep.
I don't know. We need MBAs, and they're super
Yeah.
smart people, and all of those things. I have friends that are MBAs, but give me the people that are battle tested, and I think you have the DNA to really build a company that's going to be pretty successful.
That is great advice. The scratch and denial. I'm going to just shamelessly steal that. I'm going to tell you right now. I love
Do it.
that.
We're better
Yeah.
together. This is why we do these things.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Exactly. I love it. Okay. Here's an obvious. Your business is named Proven Chaos. Either that's also probably one of the coolest rock band names you could ever come up with too. But tell me about Proven Chaos. Well, why that
Well,
name?
I think it came to me while I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I was actually in the middle of writing what I hope will be my first book, The 9 Principles of Personal Performance. And I was thinking about the types of people that I work with, and they're all high achievers, they're all entrepreneurs. And at some point in time, Roger, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your own business endeavors, you've proven there's a marketplace, right? Holy smokes, this thing is working. But you're in chaos because your people, your systems, or your process, or all of them, haven't kept pace.
Yeah.
And so that's how I came to be with Proven. You've proven there's a marketplace, and you're in chaos because one of these things is broken, and it's causing you to lay your head down on the pillow and think, man, I'm so lucky that the business is working, but man, this is hard. And being able to bring calm back into the chaos of business so that you can be really um, fulfilled by the work that you do. I think that's our highest purpose. I don't know if you've ever read the Book of Joy, which is a conversation between the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And they talk about the pillars of joy. And really, it's just the idea of living your life on your terms. And how do we do that, right? So entrepreneurship is one way of doing that. Franchise ownership, another way. Being great employees, another way. But as long as we bring conscious intention to our world.
I like that.
And not just like, oh, yeah, I want to go do this thing. Like, write it down, make it clear, make it tangible. It gets us to this place where when we're clear on our vision and our values, and you align that with your actions, you puff your chest up a little bit. You feel better about the world around you, even when it doesn't work out. Because it's like, well, it didn't work out, but I'm still headed in the right direction. And so one of the things that I consistently try and turn back around, because of course you're going to serve your business. Of course you're going to work really hard. Of course you're going to onboard some stress along the way. But the question that I ask all of my entrepreneurs is, what do you want the business to do for you? Because if the cost of entrepreneurship is greater than the price that it's returning to you, then you're going to go bankrupt. And that is not a good business proposition. And listen, I don't know about you, I'm sure you've encountered this as well. I've run into people who have become financially wealthy in their business, true wealth, and at the same time became emotionally bankrupt.
Yep.
And to me, that you've lost the game. You missed the point of doing all the things that we're doing.
Yep.
And so we want to make sure that, we don't become resentful about our business because we're very dialed into the conscious intention of why we're doing it. And that allows you to be gritty and resilient and all of those things, right? I think discipline is always freedom. But where does discipline come from? It comes from a place of being so committed to create this goal or environment or whatever it might be that you're willing to be gritty and resilient. It comes from a place. And at least for me, that strong sense of commitment, again, written down, right? Doesn't exist if it's not in writing. Think about the opportunities to live your life on your terms. That's what we're trying to do.
Love it. Love it. So you left being an employee, the highest level employee, a CEO, to start your own business. So many of listeners are they tune into this podcast because either they are business owners and they're looking to grow and scale and 10x, or a lot of people are right there on the verge. They know they're not happy. They go to work and they're not happy. They know they need to make a change, but it's scary. You and I both know it's scary and it's hard. I'll always say, we offer very simple business models, but it's not easy. Like, it's simple, but not easy.
Yep.
What was that transformation for you as you went from, highest level CEO, but to your own business? To walk us down that path.
So I got tired of making really good decisions and the stress that goes along with really good decisions without bearing the fruit. And so someone was making margin on me. The only way you pay someone, 6 figures is because they're making 7 figures.
Sure.
And when I looked up, I just thought, man, I'm pretty good at the strategy. I can bridge the tactics. I think I'm really good at making decisions, and I'm tired of those decisions making other people money. And I think, at least for me, in my career, I think the greatest predictor of future success is past performance. And so I thought to myself, am I a guy that I would make a bet on? And I said, absolutely, I would bet on myself. And so that was my third business where I was an entrepreneur. And so then I had a fourth business where I was the CEO,
Yeah.
and then started this business. And so, yeah, I tell people all the time, I mean, you are worth it. If you're thinking about it, if the opportunity is there, if you've been a high achiever in the past, don't think like, oh, well, I haven't been a high achiever, haven't because the work wasn't good or it wasn't compelling, like all of these excuses we tell ourselves. If you have been a high performer and a high achiever, that is going to continue. You're going to FSO, as I like to call it. You're going to figure stuff out. And that's not to sugarcoat it. Business is hard. There are hard lessons. And so, I tell people real stories. I was 26 years old, Roger. I was running a franchise company. We had gone from 5.9 million to 15 million in 18 months. We were raising venture capital. And so 3 different times I had a $5 million check sitting in the middle of the table. And we decided not to take the capital. Well, I literally left a meeting where we had a $5 million offer sheet and walked into our corporate headquarters, and the bookkeeper grabbed me and she said, we're not going to be able to make payroll. So what do you mean we're not going to be able to make payroll? Right? I said, just tap the line of credit. She said, I have been tapping the line of credit. And in short order, because we were raising capital, I mean, that's a job in and of itself.
Of course, yeah.
No one was really running the business. And so in the span of about 30 minutes, I went from a $5 million check in the middle of the table to realizing that we had about 900 grand of vendor debt and 741,000 on a line of credit. And we were $1.7 million in debt in a business that had historically outperformed.
Yeah.
And during that process, I started sleeping on the couch outside of my office. 100-hour weeks. I know people say like, oh, 100-hour weeks. I promise you, 100-hour weeks. There's 168 hours in a week. I promise you, I was 100 hours. And on Valentine's Day, I thought I was having a heart attack. 26 years old. And I remember laying on the gurney and I'm watching the EKG, the little beep, beep, beep. And I was counting the dots in the ceiling tile above me. And I was thinking to myself, what have you done? I mean, the price of being the soccer guy and all of those things, the cost to my health was so great that, I was a little overweight. I hadn't really worked out. I was drinking too much beer because I was traveling all the time. And suddenly I couldn't help anyone. I couldn't give anyone any answers because I was laying on a gurney. And so when you start to think about foundations at your business, I mean, the foundation of life is health. It's diet, exercise, and sleep.
Yep.
That's it. Right. And so if you're not focused in on those 3 things as the foundation of life, then I think you're missing the mark. And so I love the space that you're in, by the way.
I don't believe there's enough people in the world, in the business world, that understand how important fitness, their own personal fitness is to their business success. A strong body enables a strong mind. And for some reason, money becomes the end all be all when you have your health. Of course, the old saying, you've got 1,000 wishes. You don't have your health, you got one wish. Yep. And too many people. I love that you're talking about the sacrifice that is involved in entrepreneurism, because there's no clock in, clock out. It's just you clock in and then you clock out the day you sell that business. You're clocked in until you finally exit that business. And because of that lifestyle, so many people let their health atrophy. They let their mental health atrophy. And I'm really glad you talked about that and were very open about your own story, because it's a slippery slope. You wake up there. It is a slippery slope.
Yeah. It is a slippery slope. That's why I always come back to conscious intention. What do you want the business to do for you? You have to be really clear on that. And so one of the things that I talk about when I think there has to be another way, we better build a really great leadership team. You better be really clear on the problem, the important, painful problem that you solve for your clients. Because once you have those things clear, then the tactics and everything, reveal themselves. But the mistake that I see is, I call it a high achievers trap. We think we have to do all the doing. We don't have to do all the doing. We have to resource the jobs to be done. That is our job, whether you're the CEO or you're the entrepreneur. Because if you try and do all of the things, like, I don't think Jeff Bezos was packaging books and shipping them out, right? I don't think Elon Musk is like programming the shuttle to go, to outer space.
To Mars, yeah.
And yet we get into this place where we think we're supposed to do it, and all you're doing is putting a little bottle cap. You become the bottleneck in the organization on you as a person and your own growth and your own fulfillment in all of those things. And so, this manifests in our own personal life. My wife is a very successful VP of sales for a pharmaceutical company. That also means that she travels quite a bit, right? She's great at managing her travel, but she does have to travel. Yeah. So we try and outsource everything that we possibly can to gain time back. And that's the mindset that I think you have to be in as an entrepreneur. What are the things that are unique that only I can do versus what I can outsource, right? And so I don't clean my pool. We have a pool cleaning company. I don't mow my yard. Like, I'm trying to buy as much time back because it's less expensive for me to pay Kent, who I love, who's our lawn guy, compared to me doing it. And there's no joy in it, right? I don't enjoy cleaning the pool. I don't enjoy gardening. Like, give me a spreadsheet. I'm your guy. Yeah. All those other things, that's not my world that I live in. And so I think there is an answer, right, where you don't have to kill yourself along the way. You don't have to do all the doing. You have to resource the jobs to be done. And if you can get people into that mindset of looking up and saying, oh man, I shouldn't be doing this, right? Then that's not a good use of your time. And on the flip side, I'll tell you this, right? So we talk about culture and running businesses. The last line of every job description that I've written since I've been 21 or 22 is to do anything at any time to ensure the company's success. Right? And I explain to people, if you ever say that's not my job, you are right, because you no longer have a job, right? Because it's in your job description to do anything at any time to ensure the company's success. Yeah. But I'll give you an example. I ran a high growth construction business. We went from 7 million to 30 million in 3.5 years. It was a rocket ship. It was crazy. Our cleaner quit. And we were too busy. We couldn't, who's getting the cleaner? I need project managers. Forget about the bathrooms. And so I cleaned the bathrooms. Was that a great use of my time? No. But I didn't clean the bathrooms for 6 months. Yeah. Right? I did it for a short period of time because we do what we need to do in the short term, but that can't be the predictor of everything that you do. Right? And I see this in scaling business. I mean, you have a scaling business. I've had scaling businesses. And so people try and outwork scale. You can't outwork scale.
Well said.
It eats you up and spits you out. It's why people stop reading, stop going to the gym, stop being a good dad, stop like all of these things. Cause it's like, oh, honey, I'm going to be 5 more hours. Once we get past this, little inflection point, it's like, you can't do it. You can't outwork scale. And so getting people back like, okay, well, I have to resource the problem. So I have to write better systems and process. I've got to implement technology to make it go faster. And then as a last resort, I have to hire someone, right? Sometimes you just need more humans. But the default for people is like, let's just hire people and we throw bodies at issues instead of thinking about better systems.
Let's talk about that just for a second. Let's drill that into that because, and I'll tell you, in my own businesses, I'm at that inflection point where, let's hire another person. Let's hire that department. And with technology, I'm reluctant to just continue to approve all these hires. So talk to me about what you've seen to be the most successful way to scale versus just throwing bodies at the problem.
Listen, sometimes the answer is just throw bodies at the problem because you're in such pain. You're in such pain. I mean, I had one day, I'll come back to the construction business. Yeah. I don't know if you remember the old UPS commercial where they launched a website and everyone's gathered around and says like 3 orders and then like 72 orders and 122 orders. And like within 30 seconds, they have 70,000 orders. They're like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Right. And we had a day like that. We got $500,000 worth of purchase orders from one client in one afternoon, like in the span of like 3 hours.
Wow.
And I was like, holy smokes. And there is no better system. There is no better technology. It was go hire people. And in the span of 3 days, we hired 5 people. Now, the lesson in that, Roger, is 4 of those 5 people were gone within 90 days.
Yeah.
Right? Because we hired without discipline, we hired without rigor, without a process to make sure that we were inviting the right people on the mission. Depending on how fast your company is scaling, right? So when we were on that rocket ship, I didn't operate on budgets because there was no way to predict how fast the revenue was going to be coming in. But what I tell people is you should operate with financial models. So there is a relationship between revenues and my projected, cost of goods sold and my operating expenses. And the way I explain this is it's much like going to the gym and chocolate cake. So did you go to the gym that morning? And when you get to dinner, someone says, would you like a piece of chocolate cake, Roger? And you say, in fact, I do. I've worked out this morning. I feel good about it. I've earned that resource. And the flip side of that is the person who didn't work out and they get to dinner and they say, I really want that chocolate cake. I'll work out tomorrow morning. And sometimes they don't. So brilliant. It depends on your tolerance for risk, right? One is I'm going to put some stress on the system and my people until I earn the resource, until I earn that piece of chocolate cake and that OpEx dollar, because the revenue has grown, is available for me to hire someone. And the other is if you're growing so quickly and you have at least some visibility to say, this is going to continue, right? I mean, you're in a recurring revenue model, sure. I assume. Yep. So you have some visibility to your growth and what it looks like. And so the question is, how much pain do I want my people to be in? How much pain will they endure in the span of growth? And how do I get them out of pain as quickly as possible? Here's another thing that I learned scaling companies. My project managers, again, I'll use the construction company, at 20 projects, they were telling me, we can't do any more. And I said, hang in there. I think we can figure this out. And at 40 projects, they said, we can't do any more. Jerry, come on, this is crazy. And at 80 projects, they said, we can't do any more. And 100 projects, they were right. And I got them all assistant project managers, right? And so you have to be careful about when people are asking for resources. Have they been earned? Have we dialed in all of the systems and process to be as efficient as possible? Have we leveraged technology to make it go faster and faster? And then we add on the human capital, because it's much like training, right? You can't run a 6-minute mile coming off the couch, but in 6 months you can run a 6-minute mile, right? As long as you get up to that pace. But when the business really starts working, people are gonna be like, whoa, this feels way different. I need help. It's like, hang in there. Let's see how it works.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think the key piece is making sure that you're communicating through that time. I see you in pain. I see you in pain, and I'm going to get you help, right? Hang in there with me. But yeah, I find most people don't operate on financial models, even if it's just, hey, I want my OpEx to be whatever, 30% of revenues. Okay, now we have to fight over whether it's going to marketing, whether it's going to store openings, whether it's like where it's going. Yeah. But that's how you avoid getting yourself in trouble.
Yeah. You talked about hiring those 5 people, in 3 days, but you didn't hire with intention because you couldn't. You needed to put the bodies against it. And you said something earlier that, previous behavior is previous performance is the best predictor of future performance, which is really competency selection interviewing in a nutshell. And we're huge fans of that here, versus, hypothetically, what would you do in this situation where we run a very tight competency selection interviewing process. So hiring with intention and talking about that, you have a philosophy called the personal user manual. Which is for when you onboard something. So if you've been really intentional about hiring, you've used a good process to bring on the right people that are aligned with your values. Talk to us about the personal user manual.
I think it's the greatest gift you can give a new employee. right? Because clarity is kindness. Brene Brown said that. And so, I'm sure you've been in an employee in situations, and you go in the first day and you're a little nervous and you're meeting people and you don't quite, like, I don't know what makes Roger tick. Like, he's a little bit different. He's a little bit this. And then they do something and you're like, that idiot, why is Jerry doing that? Right? We probably haven't trained them. It's probably the first answer. But the personal user manual is literally giving people the answers to the test before they have to take the test. And so you can build it however you want. I have a format. I'm happy to share it with your audience. But it's walking through what makes me tick. What inspires me? What's my future view of the world? Heck, all the way down to like, what's my favorite TV show? Like, maybe we can connect over your favorite TV show.
Yeah.
But it's giving people a roadmap instead of making them guess. I'll give you an example. Like, I'm great at second stage ideas. I need you to go somewhere else to like vet your first stage idea so that they can tell you it's stupid. But over the course of my career, people say like, "Oh, you have a minute? I have an idea." It's like, no, right? Have you talked to anyone else about it yet? And so, but I'm really good at developing second stage ideas. Same with second stage companies. Once you've proven that there's a business here, I can help you operationalize it like no one else, right? That is my strong suit. And so I give people that feedback, right? Like why make them guess about, and why would I get frustrated? Like, go talk to 3 other people before you bring me ideas. I'm happy to like ping pong great ideas. But, another one is I get up around 4:00 every morning. And so you feel free to text me after 9:00 because I try to get to bed at 9:00. You're not going to get a response, but you will get one at 4 a.m. Yeah. And if it's fair for you to text me at 9:00, it's fair for me to text you at 4.
Fair trade. Fair trade. I love that.
Fair trade.
So you have another. Let's talk a little bit about values, but you also have the 4 C's. You refer to the 4 C's when you're coaching a leader and helping him or her. First, let's start with values. You're really big on a personal set of, from what I understand, a personal set of values. In addition to, we have business values. How do you separate those two, and what comes first? If you have a business, do the business values come first, or do the personal values come years before that?
Yeah. So I think everyone should have their own set of personal values. These are the things that make me feel good. I don't know if you've ever had this situation. I've done it a million times in my life where I did something and then I got this pit in my stomach and I felt like garbage, right? And it's because at the heart of it, there was some transgression on how you view the world and how you want to, take action in the world. And that's really at heart of it, your values. And so I think everyone has values, whether they've been intentional about them, whether they've reconciled them and written them down so they can be accountable to them. I think it always starts with the person first, because when I think about compelling companies, right, there's 3 ways to create a compelling company. One is that people are inspired by the mission that you're on. And they say, "Oh my God, I love fitness. Roger, please hire me into your company." The second is their values, right? I love the company's values. When I go there, it's really the operating system of the company. It's how we treat each other. It's the agreements that we're going to treat each other on. And I don't care what we're doing, the impact that we're making. I just love the people that I work with, right? That's the second way that you can create a compelling company. And the third is your position, right? So I may say like, I don't know, I love sales, but I really love B2B SaaS sales. And that's my unique spot in the world where I really get energized about it. The magic is if you get all 3 of them right, now you're off like a rocket ship, right? Where people have alignment for the vision, alignment of the values that they're going to adhere to them, and that they love their role that they're fulfilling for the company. That's how you really create a compelling company. Yeah. Yeah. And so the only way you can do that is if the values for the person match or are complementary to the values of the company, or else you're never going to have that fit. And so having people go through the exercise of, what are my values? And, I have a values exercise that I can give you and take people through. I think about that in peak experiences. What are the things where you feel euphoric? Like, God, that was amazing, right? Those are clues to like, there's something in your values there. And, for me, peak negative experiences are good indicators. And so one of my frustrations, because, if I had to get one like overarching core value for myself, it would be contribute. There's a million ways that you can contribute, a million. And my wife and I like to host a lot. And so, yeah, I don't know, if you don't have any money that week and you can't, I don't know, bring some potato chips or some beer or whatever. Sure, drink our beer, eat our food. Help us clean up the kitchen. Right? Yeah. It's easy. There's a million ways to contribute and to rebalance those things. And so I have had peak negative experiences where I get frustrated, where we have friends over and I'm like, this is not a restaurant. I am not your server today. Sure. And so it's a good indicator that that's probably one of your close to one of my values. And so if you start paying attention to those things, you start writing them down, you're going to be like, oh, okay, got it. I run a leadership course, and 2 years ago I had this guy call me, and it was an unexpected phone call. And he said, "Now I know why I hate my wife." And I said, "Tell me more." And he said, "Well, I went through the core value exercise, and my wife does this thing that she doesn't even know, and I didn't know it, but that's the thing that creates friction in our relationship." And he said, "Now that I've actually gone to her and said, sweetheart, when you do this thing, it's a triggering mechanism for me. And that's why I get frustrated and why we get into a scrap." And he said, "My relationship over the last week has been amazing."
Wow.
Because I had this experience to get clarity on what it is that we're trying to achieve, both in my life, in her life, and in our life. Yeah. Right. And so I think it's the same thing with husband and wife. Like, we better be aligned on values.
Oh, sure.
Same thing. You're getting locked into a relationship with a company. You should have alignment on the values, and it's okay. Right. I'm sure you've had experiences with this too, where, someone who was a 10 at one company comes into another company. You're like, it's like they're a 6 or a 7. Why is that? I think if you got right down to it, we hire for competence, we fire for values, generally speaking. Right? Generally speaking, that's how it works. Like, what did you do before? Can you do it for me? That's why I'm hiring you. But at the end of the day, it's like, I just don't like Roger. I do not want to, like, when he calls, I look at my phone, I'm like, damn, it's Roger. Right? I want people to be like, oh man, it's Roger. What's up, Roger? Yep. That's when it really gets fun in running companies. And that's why I think it's so critical that, yes, companies should have values, although lots of them don't. Shockingly, lots of them don't. They're typically not great performers. And then, if we take the time to create some clarity for ourselves about our own values, boy, we unlock a world that wasn't previously accessible to you.
Yeah. What are the 4 C's? And I think contribution may be one of them, which oddly enough is one of your values. What are the 4 C's when you refer to those?
Yeah. So when people think about leadership and what is the role of a leader? I think the role of a leader is to create a predictable environment where our employees make engaged, autonomous, and agile decisions. Right? So I got to be like super consistent in what I'm doing. It's why I'm giving people my personal user manual. It's why we go through values. Here are the things that get me working. I want to create that predictable environment and then let people go to be really successful. And I'm here. Yep. But the role of a leader, and to make sure that people stay engaged and compelled and agile, is you have to do 4 things. One is you have to create clarity for them. What is your role here? What is the problem that you're solving for the company? Here's why you've been hired. Here's what a good workday looks like, right? One of my goals is that every single one of the employees inside all of my companies, when they go home at night and their spouse says, "Roger, did you have a good day?" They're able to say, "I had a great day." First of all, I love the mission that we're on, the values. I just love the people, like the amazing people. And I needed to do 6 widgets today, and I did 8. I'm kicking ass. This is amazing, right? And when you do that, you give people the opportunity to be really engaged and autonomous. The second is They should be challenged by the work that they're doing. If they're not challenged by the work, they're going to go find somewhere else to go do something that is compelling or challenging to them. And so how do you create career paths? How do you give them new projects? How do you take an interest in them as a person to know, you know what? This is a stopover for them. They're really in school to be an RN.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's be a great stopover for them. And so let's make sure that the work that we're giving them is challenging. The third one is comfortable. And our employees should feel comfortable that they have the tools, time, and training to be successful. I have hired people. I have not trained them well. I try and always give them, tools, but do they have enough time to do their work? Right? Big growing company. Sometimes, if you have 100 emails in your inbox, that's my issue. If you have 10, it's your issue. Stay 10 extra minutes. And so people have to feel comfortable. Otherwise, they're in stress, and you don't perform well in stress. Yep. So I want to make sure that you have everything that you need to do the job that you're tasked to complete. And then the fourth is, and I think this is the place where people probably miss the mark the most, and is, do you care about your people? Mm. Have you taken an interest that I know Roger has a 21-year-old and 19-year-old, and I'm going to ask, oh, how's college going? Did they go back to school? What school did they go to? All of the things that you would normally ask another human being. Yep. And, I think sometimes people are, quote unquote, afraid to blur the lines. This is business, that's personal. I don't know. Every company that I've run, my goal is to build world-class relationships. Right. And so the only way I can build world-class relationships is really care about my people, take an interest in them, to know what makes them tick, to ask them about their wife, to ask them about their kids. Because I think what happens over time when you do that, when you get the 4 C's right, your employees say, I work for Roger. Now, you would never say, Jerry works for me, right? Yeah. We work together. We work with each other.
That's funny, yeah.
But that little word means they feel so cared about by you. They're not going to let you down. They're not going to mess up the project. They're going to stay 10 extra minutes to make sure their email box is cleaned up. That project is going to be dialed in and delivered on time. And when you can get people into that mindset of, man, I couldn't imagine working anywhere else than here, it's an unlock. And I tell a story. I had a guy walk. This was an unbelievable story. I get emotional telling this story. I had a guy walk into my office, and he had some ups and downs in his performance and his ability to control his emotions. And he shut the door behind him to my office. And I thought, this is probably not going to be good.
Never is.
And yeah. And he looked at me and he said, I love you so much that if someone was shooting you, I would take the bullet for you.
Wow.
And I sat back in my chair and I chuckled a little bit and I said, well, Tom, I'm from Philly where people actually do shoot each other. And so I hope no one is ever shooting at me. But I am so grateful that you feel that way. And I think that's just an example where you get it right. And when you get it right, people notice. And, I've messed up so many times in my career. I've raised my hand a million times. But there are core things that you can't get wrong. And, when people say, oh, people don't quit companies or positions, they quit their bosses. I think they're right. I think they're right. And I think if you just are mindful about the 4 C's, it just creates an environment where people will leave you, but it's because their mission has changed. Where they want to make an impact has changed, not because anything that we've done inside of our company.
My experience has been when they do, you're rooting for them because those kind of people they don't work with one foot out the door. They have an epiphany and a pivot, and you want to help them in any way you can because those kind of people have contributed, to use that word, to use one of your C's. You said challenging too. Mm-hmm. High performers, You talked about the 20, then 40 projects, then 60, then 80, then 100
Yeah,
projects. You want to lose a high performer, don't challenge them, because they will go find the
totally.
they're built to be challenged. They want to be challenged. And so that second C, I think, is incredibly important if you want to have a high performing team. If you want mediocre performance, don't challenge them, because the people that don't want to be challenged, they'll stay forever. You'll have very low turnover and they'll stay forever, right?
I think it was in Amp It Up, which is a recent book that I read. It's a terrific book. If you haven't read it, I would read it. And I think he talked about drivers and passengers, right? Drivers in your business, they want the wheel. They want to make the decisions. How fast are we going? We brake and which direction are we going? And then you're going to have a lot of passengers who are happy to sit there and do as little as they possibly can. And your job is to create an environment where we find the passengers as quickly as possible and kick them out of the car, right? Which I think comes back to, after I did hire 5 people and 4 or 5 of them left in 90 days, I established a hiring process. It's like, okay, we have to have a process so it's repeatable, scalable, brings predictable results. I mean, that's why we have all of those things. And yeah, that's worked out pretty good too.
Yeah, love it. Well, you're the host of the podcast Best Places to Lead. I found as a podcast host that I believe I learn even more than the audience, because it's an amazing opportunity to hear from experts and to really pick their brain. And I love to be able to go back and, hey, let's rewind this. I'd like to know more about that, very in a selfish way, not for just the listeners, but myself. What are some of the best lessons you've learned from hosting your own podcast as you've interviewed different folks?
I couldn't agree with you more. First off,
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, imagine stopping 1 hour every week to talk with the smartest person that you can find that's willing to come talk with you.
Yeah.
And so the lessons have been amazing coming through that. A lot of the things that I've learned, Roger, are reaffirmations for things that I believe, right? And, Jeffrey Gitomer once said, your job is to make what's true and make it truer. And I think he's right. One of the guests that I had was Clint Rush, tremendous CEO, Inc. 500 CEO, just like you. And he talked about, decision-making frameworks and, delegation frameworks. And I thought those were really powerful because, again, coming back to the high achievers trap, his take on it, and I don't know if he borrowed it from someone else, but is give people 10% of the information, right? Set the guardrails, set what the problem is that they're attacking, and the hypothesis, and then their job was to do 80%. Bring the project to 90% completion. I don't expect you to have it complete, right? So we've taken the pressure and the stress off of it, and get to 90%, and I will help you finish the last 10% to make sure that we can ship it. And I say this to my CEOs all the time, your people without clarity are either going to try and borrow your brain or your hands. They're constantly at your desk. Roger, what about this? What about that? What about this? And it's because we didn't do a good job on the front side telling them the journey that we were on and what we expected of them. And sometimes people, need to be, kicked in the hiney and say, you're smart. I trust you. Use good judgment. And I hired you to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And if you keep on borrowing my hands and my brain, then I'm doing your job.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. But, Clint Rush, the whole notion, because a few months before I had him on the show, I had all of my CEOs here in Jacksonville Beach. And one of the presentations that I gave was the importance of frameworks. And frameworks are the scaffolding for your scaling business. And that's how you ease the burden of leadership, right? Imagine if we had a decision-making framework. The gift that you have, Roger, is you can go on vacation. And we've created a process where everyone should come to about the same answer. Maybe there's some differences in, in the style or the flair of it.
Sure.
But here's how we allocate resources on opportunities. Here's the decision-making hierarchy that we walk ourselves through. And now suddenly, I'm not inside my business. I'm on my business. And I've, again, predictable environment, agile, autonomous, engaged decisions. We should all be able to come to about the same decisions inside of a business, and yet most companies will not. And, the piece that I tell people is we want to be predictable in our process and unpredictable in our strategy.
Okay,
So if you
speak to
want to
that.
be
Yeah.
unpredictable, be unpredictable in your strategy.
Okay.
But all the rest of it, operational excellence comes from a place of clarity from end to end
Yeah.
of making this thing run. And so, those are things that I think about. But
For flexibility, be flexible in the strategy. That can ebb and flow and turn left and turn right. And okay.
Clint was probably the guest where I learned the most.
Sure.
And it was one of those, as I did my pre-call with him, I was like, this is going to be an amazing guest. And he did not disappoint. And, to your point, and I hope we can become friends too.
Yeah.
Clint's become a friend of mine. I mean, I was just texting with him on Sunday night.
Love it.
And, those are the opportunities. And, I asked him to speak with one of my COOs. I was like, Clint, can you talk to one of my CEOs? He's stuck in this little thing. You might be able to help. He's like, of course.
Yeah.
And, that's the magic of we're better together. And that's why we do shows like this again.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. You have a couple more questions, if you'll indulge me. You have on your LinkedIn page a saying that says, proving good guys finish first. Tell me about that. Because the news would have us believe otherwise, right? So speak to that.
So I haven't always done the right thing, but I've tried to do the right thing. And I just look and say, isn't it better? So if I think about things in terminal states, when I'm dying, how do I want to feel in that moment? I want to feel in that moment that I lived a life of service to other people. I want people who show up to my funeral to tell my kids, your dad was a good, nice man. He helped me. Some of his decisions worked out really well, some of them not so well, but I'm a better person because I knew him. And so when you get really clear about that's the thing that I want people to say about me, then yeah, I'm going to be helpful to people. I'm going to go out of my way. I'm the guy that holds the door. I compliment the shoes, not because I have to, but because I want to, because I want to create as much joy in the world as possible. And so, those are the things that I think about in just trying to be super intentional in all things that we do.
That was beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Yeah.
So, I always like to ask guests, where do you see your firm in 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, really just your goal for the firm. And I know you have this very ambitious goal to positively impact 5 million people, which is a lot of people. How do you do that? How do you do that?
So I'm really clear about this. I'm in the middle of writing 2 books. One is the 9 Principles of Personal Performance, because the first thing that we need inside companies are great people. And so how people live really conscious, intentional, fulfilled lives. Let's not leave that to chance. Let's teach all of our people how to do that. The second piece is the business acceleration model. That's my second book. And it's the model that I have used to accelerate businesses onto the Franchise 500, the Inc. 500, and Best Places to Work, and now advise over 100 companies who are who are doing the same types of things. And so I have a proven business model married with great people. What's the gap in that? And the gap is great leadership, because that's the thing that glues our great people together with a business model, an operating business model. And so I believe leadership should be in a training environment. And so within 5 years, I'll have 2 books, and I will be teaching leaders, senior leaders, how to fill that leadership gap. Because for me, there's 3 pieces to it. One is the leader is individual. So we got to define who we are, what our promises are, the personal user manual, the values, all of those things, so that I can create that predictable environment. The second is the leader as technician. So all the core competencies that we do every single day, let's get better and better at them. And then the third is the leader as strategist, because we've got to understand how we solve a problem differently than everyone else so we can get paid for it. And so if I do this right, I'll be on stages sharing with people how they can run a compelling company that they feel great about, that is profitable, that's aligned with their own values, And I don't know that there would be anything more inspiring to me other than continuing to watch um, my kids thrive and my wife continue to grow in her pursuits. And I think that's the gift that Mother Nature bestowed on me, Roger. And it would be irresponsible of me not to try and give that gift to the world. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, Jerry, you have so much clarity. There's not a doubt in my mind you'll do that. You have so much clarity on mission that it's a foregone conclusion. That'll be a wonderful ride to watch, but I already know the destination. It's you're manifesting it.
A lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
But thank you for those
Yeah.
kind words. I believe you're right. We're working hard towards it, and I have a clear path on what it is that I'm supposed to do in this world, and um, I'm going to work as hard as I can to do it.
I love it. Last two questions. I'm an avid reader. I devour biographies and business literature, all nonfiction because I love it.
We'll swap books.
Okay.
I'm gonna get you your text number and we'll swap books. But go ahead.
Love it. Well, my question to you and it's for the listeners as well, because leaders are readers, right? Leaders are readers. Yep. What's one book that, and I know you probably read tons, obviously, especially we're going to swap. I love it. What's a book though that you would recommend to someone that you know would be life-changing, that changed your life, that would likely impact somebody else?
So I used to always recommend two books.
Okay.
And the first one was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Still love that book. It's amazing. The second was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I just thought the world would be a better place if people just read these two books. Man, forget about business, it would be a better place, more fun to be in. And then I read The Book of Joy. And The Book of Joy is a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And, the first half of the book chronicles, their meeting, which was, historic in nature. And then the second half of the book uncovers the pillars of joy. And I come back to, I left with that book with this just intense feeling of what the purpose of life is. And that is your vision, your values, and your actions, putting them in alignment to create fulfillment and joy. It's got to be your life on your terms. And we had a family member that just passed away. And on Friday, I was asked to preside over the funeral. And I talked about the gift of death and what it teaches us about life. And I think when you think about that, we'll be dead for an eternity. If you are trying to live on other people's terms, you're going to be sorely disappointed. They're going to be sorely disappointed. And what a ripoff that is, right? Because I think we only get one chance at this. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd be delighted to be wrong.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I think if we can just bring that back to people to say, what are your unique gifts and how are you supposed to give them to the world? And I think that's what the Book of Joy is all about.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll put that in the show notes, and that'll be on within 15 minutes, that'll be ordered off Amazon by me. Okay. The most important question I can ask you is, you've shared amazing wisdom and just wonderful insight, and you've been incredibly authentic and open with the audience and me, and I greatly appreciate that. Very, very grateful for that. Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? How do they follow you? I know people want to engage after this, so how can they find you?
Thank you for being a great interviewer, because I'm lucky enough to be on a number of podcasts, and not all of them are as well run as yours. So thank you for this opportunity. It's been truly a gift. And I would tell you, this is the least important question you've asked, right? But people can find me at provenchaos.com. One of the fun ways to engage with me is every Thursday from 2 to 3 o'clock Eastern time. We invite anyone who wants to come, senior leaders, and it's really just an open roundtable of like, hey, I have this issue. Does anyone have any ideas? And you'll always get me. But typically we have anywhere from 7 to 15, 18 people on the call, all with different experiences, all with different ideas. And so that's a great place where you can come. It's free. I do it. So, my wife was she finally said to me, all those got a minute meetings that are never a minute, like, why don't you just funnel them into one place? I was like, that's great. So I've been doing that since November 2019. I've learned a lot in that too, right? I mean, it's amazing to see that. Yeah. And then, LinkedIn is always a good place to find me. I'm pretty active over on LinkedIn, and I enjoy engaging with people there.
And we'll put your LinkedIn link right there too in the show notes. So that Thursday 2 to 3, they go to your website and there's a link or a number or whatever to join there. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Right at the top, you'll see an ability to register. It's just a Zoom call, right? Yeah. You'll just hop on, come as you are, come as you can. If you can come one week and not the next, no big deal, right? Yeah. But I've had a core group of people that have been coming since November 2019. Wow. In fact, we just had a business spring out of office hours because someone found their calling and passion, through our weekly calls, and that was pretty freaking cool to watch that happen. Powerful. So, it's fun stuff.
Jerry, again, thank you so much. I have absolutely enjoyed this. I learned a lot, and most importantly, I definitely am going to send my number to you because I'd love to stay connected. Just you bring joy, my friend. Yeah, I love it. Love
it. If you get it to me today, you'll be on my CEO Insights text tomorrow. So I acquire all my insights every week, talking to CEOs literally around the world, and then I pull out the 4 or 5 things I learned this week and I share it with other CEOs.
You'll have it in 5 minutes. Awesome.
I love it.
Again, thank you. And for everybody tuning in, thank you for joining. I'm grateful for you as well. And so remember to set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive. Thank you so much for tuning into the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thank you again for tuning in, and until next time, always remember to set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive.